Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 presented by Stakes here to talk about SEC basketball action from Tuesday night, January the 3rd. Blake, let's start in Lexington, where Kentucky and LSU went down to the wire, and Oscar Tshiebwe and the Wildcats won a shootout with KJ Williams and LSU. Shootout might not be the right
I was
word,
gonna
but it
say
was
I
certainly a
probably wouldn't go
close game.
shootout. Yeah, I offensively it wasn't necessarily a shootout, although I think both teams made some shots and a little bit more efficient than maybe so it technically could have been a shootout when you consider some of the offensive struggles that Kentucky's had at times and those kind of things. But yeah, it was. Like you said, not surprised it was a close game. I think the way LSU plays defense, I think you fully expected them to give Kentucky, to at least make the game pretty tight the whole way. And, I guess outside of Kentucky getting up 10 about midway through the second half, it was kind of that kind of game where every sort of possession down the stretch mattered. Now, I know it wasn't always pretty for Kentucky to try to get the win. Livingston made the foul on the three and those kind of things late and kind of a frustrating finish, but it's a win, and that's what we said Kentucky needed more than anything. It's just to win a game against a team like this that is LSU a tournament team right now? No, but they can still play their way into that. And again, we talked about LSU's resume to this point. There's not a ton that stands out outside of the Arkansas win, but when you look at the fact that Kansas State is 13-1 and just put up 116 points at Texas last night in just one of the wildest games you'll see, a 116-103 game in college basketball, and again to score 116 against Texas. Um,
That's something.
that shows you that LSU again is a team that's not really going anywhere, and I mean that in terms of not going anywhere in a negative direction. They're not going anywhere in a positive aspect because I think they're going to be right there with a chance, all season long to win some games and maybe get into the tournament. Like we said, they've got to navigate this tough schedule early here. But so yeah, I think you probably walk out of it for LSU, probably some missed opportunities. Um, I feel like you had some chances at times to, especially down the stretch there. But yeah, I mean, for Kentucky, it's a win. And again, it may not have been pretty at times, but I thought they did some things better. And still at the end of the day, it's kind of goes back to the same thing we talked about. I mean, you still kind of know that Sheboy and Case and Wallace are going to drive everything, but for somebody like Jacob Toppin to have 21 and hit the biggest shot of the game, arguably on the three late there, to put them up four in the corner, like that's what you need. And it kind of was a game where it was kind of a four-man deal for Kentucky, but those guys were able to kind of will themselves to get it done. And so I came out of this game not really knocking either side. I think it was just it was a good game, and Kentucky gets the win, LSU gets the loss. But I think both teams feel okay coming out of this.
Couple things to hit on for both teams. And for full disclosure, I didn't get to watch anything other than Vanderbilt, South Carolina. I was in the gym for that one, then went to OT. I did read the summaries and the box scores. But one thing I noticed is that John Calipari went full on Eric Musselman last night with the bench. Collins and Reeves are the only two guys who played minutes who didn't start. They had 23 combined minutes. I know that Calipari's not a deep bench guy a lot of time anyway, and the CJ Frederick injury has certainly shortened the bench. But did you feel like that was a decision that made the team better? I mean, Reeves is a guy that I guess probably averaged more points than anybody on this team did last year, albeit that was at another stop. But I thought that was just in scanning the box score, that was an interesting development.
Yeah, I mean, they only played six basically against Louisville, and um, if you look back at some of their games, I think probably you're looking at again with the Frederick injury, which, like we said, I mean, his minutes weren't exactly through the roof, anyways, at this point in the season,
Right.
and so you take that's one you take out of the equation, and then look at some others in terms, like you said, it's just sort of it's been hit or miss minutes for other guys that I think have kind of been in spot roles, but your main core is is these 6. Like, that's kinda your core, and so I just think that's, that's gonna probably, and that's not knocking Collins either, because I think you know, I think he's someone that will be able to give them some minutes. Now, I know they've been very sparingly over the past month or so, but I still think there will be times where he can give them some minutes, that will be helpful for just as the main group. Yeah, I mean, I think it's those 6 guys, and it worked last night. So, you know, like we said before with Arkansas, I mean, if you get in foul trouble and those kind of things, it certainly changes the dynamic a little bit. Guy gets injured, all those things. But I just think if it's going to happen, it's going to have to come through probably those 6 guys. And, at this point, I just think that's where Kentucky is. And, I really just believe that's probably their best chance is to, and that's, like I said, I mean, Casey Wallace and Oscar Tshiebwe, they got to play 40 minutes, in my opinion. I don't
Yeah,
know how you can
and
take either
Wallace
guy off
did.
the floor.
You,
So,
you've called the Wallace thing for a while now, and I think you were right.
I mean, I just say I don't think you can take either guy off the floor, and that's where, like we said, foul trouble and those kind of things. Every game's different, but I just so I mean, those are 2 guys that are non-negotiables to me. Like they always have to play, and so I just think that's going to give Kentucky the best chance to win. And if Cal's starting to figure that out and realize, hey, we just got to roll with our main guys, and if we're going to do it, they got to do it. That's fine, because like to me, that gives them the best chance to win games that they have coming up at Alabama or at Tennessee. Because if it's just playing anybody and everybody in these kind of games, we just have enough of a sample size so far to understand that that's probably not the best strategy. And you know, they still have a ways to go offensively, sure, but they're figuring some things out, and I think that's all you can ask for at this point, given all the frustrations this season.
Yeah, a couple things on LSU before we move on to Tennessee, Mississippi State next. Justice Hill, and by the way, one more thing on Kentucky I meant to bring up. You mentioned foul trouble. Kentucky only whistled for 11 fouls, so that did enable Calipari to shorten the bench and keep the starters in. So different night, maybe that goes differently. But to LSU, Justice Hill just hasn't played well this year. Their point guard who transferred from Murray State, I think we expected better things. Last night he plays 13 minutes, doesn't score. Didn't have any foul trouble. In fact, he wasn't whistled for a foul. And I guess it was just performance. Adam Miller, you've talked about what a key he was for LSU. He was 5 for 11, or excuse me, 5 for 13 from 3 last night. So I think if you're LSU, you don't walk away from this game feeling any worse. Although I don't know what they have to do to get Hill going. Maybe it just isn't going to happen this year. I don't know.
No, I mean, you lose by 3 at Rupp. I don't think there's a whole lot you come out of this feeling that upset about. I mean, sure, like the Hill thing, but I mean, the fact is he's still playing a lot of minutes, and I know he didn't play a ton last night, but yeah, I think he helps him in other areas because I mean, he's still kind of a good passer, I think, and kind of leading. So I don't know that they need him to be a high level
Well,
scorer.
Trey Hannibal has really stepped it up the last 2 games.
Well, yeah, and I think again, I don't know that Hill's role is to be a high level type scorer
Yeah.
necessarily on this team, and I think so. I think he kind of plays his role, and he may have some of those games where it doesn't come together. And like I said, that's just kind of one of those things that can happen throughout the course of a season. But yeah, I mean, it's not the same, but like it's no different. There are 2 guys that LSU is going to lean on a lot, and that's KJ Williams and Adam Miller. And everybody else, if you can get, we talked about before, like a Derek Fountain and guys like that involved, and get them to double digits and have games like that where they can help you in other areas. I mean, that's the best you can ask for, I think, with this team, because they are still, I think, figuring it out. And but you know who your main guys are, and I think that's they've established that at this point. And so yeah, I mean, you can look at certain guys and say, well, they're not doing this or not doing that, but I think they all kind of complement each other pretty well. And I think at the end of the day, like I said, I think LSU is going to be. I think they're going to be fine if they can just get through this. I mean, really, as we said, through February 8th, basically, which is a month of games here. They've got a couple in there that feel like they should win, and maybe should beat Florida at home, have a chance to win at A&M on Saturday. But all these other games are just they're tough, and so I think that's where you see certain guys step up, and they'll need a little more help outside of maybe two or three guys, which they've proven they can get. It's just can they do it over the sustained stretch here against easily the toughest part of their schedule. So.
Before we talk Tennessee, Mississippi State, a quick word from our sponsor, Stakes. Predict sports better than the crowd for a chance to win NFTs. With Stakes, players can submit their sports predictions against friends, other fans, and influencers forever. Don't let your sports genius go overlooked. Join Stakes and have the best predictions captured in the moment. Head to playwithstakes.com/14. Use your invite code Southeastern14 for a double welcome bonus. We've been putting up some basketball questions on Stakes, so be sure to check those out and make your predictions. Okay, Blake, Tennessee jumps on Mississippi State and Knoxville out of the gate, gets up 16-0. But I think the most notable thing in this one, Josiah Jordan-James plays for the first time in about, I think, 10 games? I mean, Tennessee had been rolling pretty well without him. But the way the Vols, look, we were not surprised that Tennessee stifled Mississippi State. I think we even mentioned, hey, you never know. State could score in the 40s in Knoxville. It's not a very good offense, and we know what Tennessee can do to people defensively. But to see Tennessee score 87 against what was, I think, Ken Palm's number 6 defense coming in, I don't think any team between the James development and the way Tennessee played on both ends of the floor last night felt any better about its chances for the season coming out of last night than did Tennessee. Is that fair to say?
Well, yeah, I mean that you certainly feel a lot more confident. I think it's probably time to look beyond the numbers with Mississippi State on the defensive side of the floor, because what's happening is what we predicted a couple weeks ago, in that as the competition gets better, if your defense
Yeah.
isn't flawless,
Strength of schedule was awful. Yeah.
well, and if you're not flawless on defense, you're not good enough offensively to overcome it. So we saw that in the Alabama game, where it wasn't to the extent that it was against Tennessee. But against Tennessee, when you put yourself in that kind of hole to start the game, all of a sudden everything flips, and how you play changes drastically. And so I think that was the the problem for Mississippi State, is they are not a team that can afford to put itself in that kind of situation early on in a game, because it changes how they play. And Tennessee was able to take advantage of that, because now you realize, okay, they can't play the way they want to play and win this game, because we've already jumped on them 16-0, and it just changes how things are going to flow the rest of the way for both sides. And so I think Tennessee absolutely took advantage of that. And yes, to put up 87 points, like we said, on a team, many times we mentioned they had only given up 50 something, in all their games. Now, yes, that's a confidence booster for Tennessee. Even if, again, Mississippi State, we're starting to kind of see what they are, I think, against good teams. But that's still, there's no way around it. Like, it's still an impressive performance, just given everything that you saw from Tennessee in this game. And like you said, getting James back it's huge, because it gives you another guy that can play. And as we said, he can kind of be that guy, that X factor, given all the different things he can do. And so, yeah, pretty excited to see him back out there, because again, he's a good player, and he will help all these other guys that can do the things that they can do. And Ziegler has a double double, 11 points, 10 assists. They just did. I mean, there's another way to put it. Like, they did a lot of things well here. They shot the
12 for
three well.
21 from 3. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's something else that. And that's where James, he goes 2 of 2. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that gives you another guy who can shoot the three. And if Ziegler's hitting threes, Vescovi's hitting threes, Key's hitting threes. I said before, these are guys who are capable. It was just early on in the season, they were just shooting a lot and they weren't making them necessarily. But now, if you catch Tennessee on the wrong night, yeah, like, they can make threes. It's just, it's trying to figure out how to defend them. And so, yeah, I mean, for Tennessee, you couldn't ask for a better performance than they had. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what they needed. Again, heading into kind of a nice little stretch here in terms of their schedule, if you really look at it. They go to South Carolina on Saturday, play Vanderbilt next Tuesday, Kentucky at home, at Mississippi State, who they just walloped, at LSU, tough, Georgia at home. It's a nice opening month of the SEC slate for Tennessee, at least the schedule wise. So
Well, no Namori Burnett, which wasn't really a surprise. No problem for Alabama, which beats Ole Miss 84-62. You called that. Nate Oates has just been a nightmare for Kermit Davis to solve. Boy, beating Ole Miss by 22 is a lot. But 4 guys in double figures again. I didn't see this one, but you did, so I'll just let you take it from here.
yeah, I mean, we just a bad matchup. That's kind of what we talked about in the preview. It's just a bad matchup for Ole Miss. This isn't the kind of team that you feel like. I mean, the Tennessee game was different because you felt like the style was more complementary for Ole Miss to have a chance to win. This type of style is just not one that I think Ole Miss can win in with the current team. Like this team just cannot play the way Alabama plays. Like it's just a much harder thing to do. So yeah, I mean this really was kind of a game that exactly played out the way you thought it would. Um, we talked about Ole Miss just offensively, where they go 2 of 24 from three.
24. Mm.
Yeah, I mean they're shooting 29% from three on the season now. That's 330th nationally. So you can you counter that with an Alabama team offensively that can just do so many things well. They got to the free throw line last night. That was a big part of it. But the biggest theme of the game is pretty easy if you just watch the game. Like Alabama only turned it over 7 times, and for a team that we've said their biggest issue has been turning the ball over, that's an encouraging trend, is to have a guy like Jaden Bradley who's able to really, kind of command the point guard spot. Obviously playing off of Sears, having 2 guys like that at the guard position, you feel really confident and kind of maybe calming things down a little bit, establishing, what they want to do offensively. I think it's really worked out. And again, Sears, I know was turning over a little bit early in the season. You're still going to have turnovers, like you said, in the way they play, but I think that's been a big difference is adding Jaden Bradley to the mix has helped. And again, they're going to turn the ball over sometimes, but in a game like this, it's pretty encouraging to see that they value the ball more. And yeah, I mean, just overall, like I said from the start, I mean, even the preview, just Ole Miss just did not have the offensive firepower to keep up with Alabama. And, I mean, Ole Miss had what, 30, they only had like 39 points, I think, with midway through the second half. So it's just kind of one of those games. It was just a bad matchup. And you have that in SEC play sometimes. You look across and say, man, that team's a great matchup for us. That team's a bad matchup for us. I just think Alabama's a bad matchup for a lot of teams, but specifically Ole Miss. It's just one of those dynamics that for whatever reason, it's not a great matchup for the Rebels.
Before we talk about Vandy, South Carolina, a quick word from our other sponsor, BROTHROW. If you don't like betting 10 or betting $11 to win 10, BROTHROW is a place for you. You can bet in all 50 states. BROTHROW isn't the house, so bettors have a fair chance at winning. It is the only sports betting platform that doesn't take a cut of every bet. You don't have to deposit money into a BROTHROW account. There are no minimum bets and no need to connect your bank account. Bettors pay each other directly. It is a hassle-free sign-up process that gets you in the action in seconds. Go to brothrow.com/SE14. Once you get there, ask to join our private Southeastern 14 group. We'll let you in, and we can play some bets and have some chatter there. Support the folks who support us. Get in on BROTHROW today, and I think you're going to really love what you see. Okay. Not a lot of fans on hand in Memorial Gym last night to enjoy what they saw. It was, Blake, it was maybe 1,500 at tip-off. I think maybe 4,000 fans in the stands total when at maximum capacity, although they got treated to a good game. Vanderbilt South Carolina takes Vanderbilt to overtime on kind of an improbable play to win regulation. Vanderbilt hits, I think, 13 of 14 free throws in overtime. I think all those from Liam Robbins and Ezra Mannion. Robbins was great again last night. I think he went 22 points, 7 boards, 6 blocks, something like that. Magnon scored 24. Got to see Gigi Jackson in person for the first time. Was really impressed with his skill set, but Vanderbilt's Jordan Wright kind of shut him down. I think we went into last night thinking these were probably the worst 2 teams in the league. And I think if that's true, the bad news, if you're Vanderbilt, is that you go to overtime and you're building against the team that we think is the worst of the 2.
Well, if you're looking for the optimistic side of it, I mean, they found a way to win the game, and
Right.
that was important because if they lose that game,
They've got a gauntlet coming up.
well, and the conversation just that's already been had, and we know what the conversation that is. I mean, it changes dramatically. I think if they lose that game, because then you're staring down not I don't even want to say the possibility. I mean, in all like the likelihood of 0-5 to start SEC play, because they got to go to Missouri, they go to Tennessee, home against Arkansas, home against Alabama. That's their next 4 games. And those are the top 4 teams in the SEC via us right now. So, that's not ideal. So, I mean, just winning that game gives you something to kind of hang your hat on here as you head into this gauntlet coming up over the next couple of weeks. So, I think that's important. And again, if you want to look at it from the optimistic standpoint, I mean, you had, like we've said a lot this season, you had your older guys step up, and that's how they're going to have to win. Is basically that senior group, that trio. I mean, you can add Malora Brown to the mix too, just given some of the things that he can give them, rebounding wise and such. But that's the key to their season. Like, it's getting the most out of that trio of guys you mentioned a second ago. Um, I think that's it, and that's how they're going to have to win some SEC games, is getting the most out of those guys. And if they can do that, they'll have a chance to beat some of these teams, that we've talked about that have struggled a little bit. They'll have a chance to beat an A&M, to maybe beat a Florida. Um,
Ole Miss
but
at home would be probably the next
yeah,
winnable game, most winnable game for them.
that's another one. But Vanderbilt's SEC schedule is interesting because I don't think it's not easy, because if you
Oh,
really go
they
down,
got Tennessee twice, Kentucky twice,
yeah,
Alabama
I was
twice.
going to say that the fact is they get some of the top teams twice. But then you do get some opportunities against, like we said, a home game against Ole Miss, even a road game against A&M, those kind of games. They don't look as, and you got another game with South Carolina, so they don't look as daunting, But the overall schedule, like we mentioned, the next 4 games, it's just having this kind of stretch is just brutal. So yeah, I mean, my opinion on Vanderbilt, and I know some people's maybe did, thinking, boy, we only beat this team in overtime. But I don't know that my opinion on Vanderbilt changed after that game. I think it's the same thing.
Mm.
It's, do I expect them to be a team that's going to come out and just blow out anybody? No. Um, Unless it's, Southeastern Louisiana, games like that. But like in the SEC, it's not going to happen, just given kind of where they're at right now. And they're going to have to just pull out some of these wins somehow, some way. And you kind of saw that last night in that game for South Carolina. I mean, again, my opinion on South Carolina doesn't change after that game either, because they're at a point now where you know they're going to have to take advantage of their home games, and their schedule is not as tough maybe as some others. But if you're just trying to find wins right now, I mean, look, Ken Palm, again, it's not it doesn't really, it just is what it is. But like, they're not projected to win an SEC game. Meaning, right now, if you look at the
On an
numbers, right?
individual basis, yeah, the
Right. If you look
composite,
at
it's
the
3-15.
Yeah, well, if you look at the
Right.
individual games and just kind of the percentages, right now, their best percentage wise in a single game is to beat Vanderbilt at home on February 14th, and that's 42%. Beat Georgia at home March the 4th, 41%, which again, we realize this doesn't mean a whole lot, but this is kind of it's just an interesting number to look at. So, yeah, so I mean, it's an uphill climb. I mean, I would be surprised if South Carolina wins more than 3 SEC games, but that was one where maybe you come out feeling okay about, look, we went on the road. We know it's a Vanderbilt team that struggled a little bit, but we got it to overtime. We had our shot. Um, Maybe they can take that into some of these home games, like we said, against an A&M, against an Ole Miss, against a Vanderbilt, against a Georgia. That's the good thing. Like, they get those kind of teams at home where you feel like they at least have an opportunity to play a little bit better and win some of those. And I'd be surprised if they don't win a couple of those games somewhere. But overall, they have more limitations, I think, than any other team in the SEC. And so that's just probably going to put them, always playing from behind and trying to. It's going to be kind of an uphill battle, I think, for them to win a lot of games. So,
Well, if you're South Carolina, you're probably going, if we just get a little more out of G.G. Jackson, then we win the game. Flip side of that is Chico Carter, and he does this 3 or 4 times a year. He just goes off. He had 26 last night, which I think was a season high. And so you're not going to get that most nights. So take that for what that's worth. The other thing, and I was in Jerry Stackhouse's post-game press conference. The attendance there is just abysmal. I know you and I have been to a lot of games in Memorial Gymnasium. I don't think we would have ever dreamed of Vanderbilt having 3,500, 4,000 actual fans in the stands for a home opener. That usually gets a coach fired, and he is acting like a coach who's feeling the heat. I was in the post-game press conference, and in his defense, he's been asked about this a lot. And I'm not defending his strategy here, but they start the game. He's been starting lately with Liam Robbins, Jordan Wright, and Ezra Mannion on the bench. Those are maybe his 3 best players, at worst 3 of his best 5 players. They started behind 13-5 last night before he brought those guys in. And his insistence is they see the game better from the bench starting the game than they do starting it. For whatever reason, that's his take, and he's dug in his heels on it. Well, he got asked about it for about the 4th straight time by a reporter who had not been there for the last couple. And he kind of snapped at her, said, I know my team better than you do, and that's why I do what I do. And that just, to me, was not a great look for a coach who is not at all popular with that fan base right now.
yeah, but I mean, I feel like he's always just he's been that way from the start. Like, that's just his
Yeah.
personality. And um, so I think that's, yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's that surprising. And I don't know that,
I mean,
yes,
that's not going to matter. The wins and losses are what's going to matter. But watching him handle that way, and you're right, he has
yeah.
always been touchy from the start. He's blocked all kinds of people on Twitter. He's hopped into DMs with fans who've been critical of him. I mean, he's done all sorts of stuff that you just shouldn't be doing as an SEC coach. But I don't think being in the room for that one, it didn't make me feel a lot more confident that he'll be back at Vanderbilt next year, one way or the other.
Well, like we said, it's winning games is going to be difficult, I think. And if there is a magic number, I don't know what you would set that number at in terms of what they can get to based off the schedule, like we said. But something they've done even last year, right? Like, they win a game you don't think they're going to win. That was what Arkansas last year. Um, if they can beat the teams you think they should beat, which the performance last night, I mean, there's no guarantees they're going to win it at Georgia or anything like that. With to that level, I think that's going to be a difficult game. Winning A&M's will be difficult. So I don't know. I don't. It's 5. Can they get above 5? I think as it stands right now, I think that's a difficult thing to do. But it all, like I said, it all depends on the trio you mentioned, the senior or the older guys. If those guys are on the floor a lot, then I think they can be okay. But if they're balancing minutes with other guys that maybe aren't to that level, then it's a crapshoot. So.
All right. Thanks for watching us today. We'll be back tomorrow with a recap of Wednesday night's action. He's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14, presented by Steaks. We'll see you again soon.